You'd think the worst thing a courier could deliver on a rainy Wednesday morning would be a package you forgot you ordered at 2 a.m. during a tiny retail therapy meltdown. But no. My life apparently operates on a different subscription plan, one where the algorithm recommends trauma. Because the envelope dropped into my mailbox that day didn't contain shoes, or vitamins, or even the blender I keep forgetting to buy. It contained my husband's death certificate. Yes, death certificate for Ethan Cole, my Ethan. The same man who left the house 3 hours earlier in his Navy suit kissed me on the forehead and said, "Don't wait up, Len. The audit meeting might run late." The man who was, supposedly, very much alive and breathing and probably complaining about traffic somewhere on a -95. I stared at the document, at his name printed under deceased, at the stamped certification, at the official seal like it was some bureaucratic jump scare. My brain tried to reboot itself. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe there was another Ethan Cole in the city. I laughed. Then immediately stopped laughing because the signature on the request form, black ink, looping cursive, I'd recognize it anywhere. It was Ethan's handwriting. My husband had signed off on his own death. I don't know how long I stood in the kitchen, rainwater dripping off my coat, death certificate clenched so tightly it was crinkling. It felt like someone had cracked my spine open and poured ice water straight inside. My instincts flicked through denial, anger, panic, and confusion like an emotional roulette wheel on drugs. I grabbed my phone and dialed him. Straight to voicemail. I didn't panic. Not yet. Ethan sometimes kept his phone on silent during meetings. Maybe the courier had mixed up addresses. Maybe someone forged his signature. Maybe someone was trying to scam us. But then my banking app pinged, 4 notifications in a row. Life insurance policy redeemed, processing transfer requested from joint account beneficiary information, updated signature match VERIFIED. My blood turned to static. I logged into our life insurance portal and there it was, his photo, his details, his digital signature authorizing the payout. Submitted last night at 11:43 p.m. while he was supposedly asleep beside me. My mind replayed that moment, the rise and fall of his chest, the warmth of his body, the soft hum of his breathing. Had he gone out of bed, signed forms in the dark, walked right past me, a sharp, sour taste filled my mouth. I'm not a normal wife, I'm a forensic accountant. Patterns, signatures, money trails, that's my oxygen. People lie, numbers don't. And my husband's numbers were screaming. I checked our joint investments. Drained, our emergency fund, gone. His credit card statements? Bursting with unknown charges from a coastal town I'd never heard of. Hotel bookings, multiple, a rental property, a second phone line, then I saw her name, Ava Murin. Listed as his emergency contact. His domestic partner? His business partner. Business? What business? I clicked deeper. A newly registered LLC, a wellness consultancy, in Ava's name, funded by accounts tied to Ethan. The puzzle pieces weren't just fitting, they were slapping me in the face. My husband wasn't dead, he was vanishing. And he wanted the world, including me, to believe he was gone forever. My knees gave out. I slid to the cold tile floor, death certificate in one hand, wedding ring burning on my finger like betrayal made metal. And just like that, I realized something chilling. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a plan. And I wasn't part of it. The first person I called was his mother. Denial makes you do stupid things. Is Ethan with you? No, he left early, she replied. Why, is everything okay? Everything okay. My husband was apparently legally dead. So no, not okay, I lied. Just checking. Because what was I supposed to say? Hey, your son faked his death and emptied our accounts before breakfast. I took a deep breath and forced logic back into my shaking body. When your husband forges his own death certificate, there are exactly 3 possibilities. 1, he's running from the law. 2, he's running from you. 3, he's running with someone else. Based on the name, Ava Murin, I had a guess which one it was. My next move was to go to Ethan's office, or what I thought was his office. The receptionist gave me that tight, sympathetic smile people reserve for widows and stray cats. I'm so sorry for your loss. My loss hadn't even happened yet. I wasn't grieving a death, I was grieving stupidity. I forced a calm breath. What exactly did the team hear? She hesitated. Ethan informed HR last night that he was resigning due to terminal illness. He didn't want to burden the company. He said everything would be handled. terminal illness. Wow, my husband forged his death, stole our money, and threw in a fake cancer diagnosis for extra flair. Oscar worthy. I left before I slapped HR with a stapler. As I drove home, Ethan's last words kept replaying, "Don't wait up." Right, he wasn't coming home, but I wasn't the type of woman to crumble in a dark kitchen crying into leftovers. No. If Ethan wanted to disappear, he'd forgotten a very important detail. I was the one who taught him how to hide money. I knew every one of his tells, every lie, every pattern. He may have been planning for months, but I was already catching up in hours. By the time I reached home, my shock had crystallized into something sharp and steady: determination. If Ethan thought he could erase himself like a bad memo, he clearly forgot who he married. And if this Ava woman thought she could help him pull it off, oh, sweetheart, buckle up. Grandma didn't raise a quitter. She raised a woman with a spreadsheet and a vengeance problem. By midnight, my dining table looked like a crime scene assembled by an overachieving librarian. Laptops, printouts, highlighters, 3 cups of coffee, and a rage I hadn't felt since bar prep week. I started with the most basic rule of investigations: follow the transactions. Ethan wasn't creative, he was meticulous, predictable. Within an hour, patterns emerged like bruises under skin. Weekly payments to a boutique studio, hotel bookings always under the name A. Murren, large purchases from wellness stores, a down payment on an apartment in Harborview Pier, a coastal town 3 hours away. Population 4211, tourist tagline, where the ocean meets peace. Peace, oh, the irony. I dug deeper into Ava Murren. First result, a perfect Instagram profile. Blonde hair, ocean blue eyes, heart-shaped face. The kind of woman who probably practices gratitude at sunrise and ruins families by sunset. Inspirational quotes everywhere. Trust the universe. Release what no longer serves you. Your rebirth begins when your old life dies. Seriously. Was she writing captions or manifesting my murder? The deeper I researched, the stranger things became. Ava had multiple domains, multiple business profiles, multiple online shop names, all using different middle initials. Different counties, different addresses, different phone numbers. And then the red flag the size of a sailboat: no childhood photos, no family tagged, no old friends, only 2 years of online existence. People don't appear out of nowhere unless they're hiding something or running from something, or both. My pulse sharpened. Something wasn't adding up. Ethan wasn't her first. I could feel it in my bones. This woman was a pattern, and my husband had stepped right into her algorithm. I pulled every legal database I had access to, cross-checked identities, scanned through eviction records, loan applications, wellness business licenses, low-tax counties, marriage filings, property transactions. And then there it was. Ava Murren didn't exist, not legally, not in federal records, not before 2021. Her real name, Ariana Vale. Ariana Vale had a sealed police record, a bankruptcy at 23, a closed domestic fraud case, and my favorite, a restraining order filed by a former business partner. So the spiritual wellness queen was actually a seasoned manipulator. But it got worse. The bankruptcy had been financed by a man named Daniel Brooke, who later disappeared off social media. Another partner named Jonas Hart went bankrupt after investing in Ariana's wellness brand. A doctor in Maine filed charges claiming she forged his signature on leases. This wasn't a cheating story. This wasn't a con artist seducing rich men. This was a full-blown, years-long financial predator who specialized in creating new identities, grooming emotionally vulnerable men, manipulating them into draining assets, disappearing before legal action hit, repeating in a new city. And my husband wasn't just cheating with her, he was her next target. A replacement, a pawn, a stepping stone she would toss aside the minute he'd served his purpose. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. All this time I thought Ethan had betrayed me, but he wasn't the mastermind, he was the idiot. The puppet, the willing fool who believed he was her soulmate while she filled out forms to disappear with his money. I stared at the screen, fingers trembling with a mix of fury and bitter amusement. "Congratulations, Ethan," I whispered to myself. "You didn't leave me for a younger woman, you left me for a criminal mastermind." My laughter came out sharp and humorless. And then came the kicker, the line that made my skin crawl. Ethan's digital signature wasn't just on the fake death documents. It was also on a passport application. For him, and for her, matching surnames. as if they planned to run off into some sunset after erasing their old lives like they were deleting browser history. But one detail froze my blood. The passport appointment location was listed as Harborview Pier. Tomorrow, 7:30 am, which meant Ethan wasn't just disappearing in theory, he was disappearing in hours. I checked the clock. 1:02 am, I grabbed my keys. There's a moment in every woman's life when something inside her fractures, not from heartbreak, not from rage, but from clarity. That moment had arrived. My husband wasn't dead. But he had no idea just how alive his wife was about to become. And unlike him, I didn't need to fake anything. The drive to Harborview Pier should have taken 3 hours, but I reached it in 2, speeding through fog-slick highways like a woman possessed, or more accurately, a woman whose husband tried to erase her via paperwork. The coastal town welcomed me with the kind of eerie stillness found in crime documentaries. Even the seagulls seemed too polite, watching from rooftops like tiny judgmental witnesses. I parked near the harbor and scanned for the address I'd found buried in Ethan's transaction logs. Apartment 203, Bluewater Residences. The building looked new, modern architecture, sea-facing glass walls, pretending to be classy but radiating the cheap desperation of furnished rentals where affairs bloom and half-baked dreams go to die. As I climbed the stairs, my heart didn't race, it pulsed with a cold rhythm, steady and quiet. Emotion had been replaced by purpose, the kind my forensic mentors used to call the eye of the storm. Apartment 203's door was cracked open. A tiny, reckless part of me hoped I'd find Ethan alone, alive, stunned, half apologizing, maybe even regretful. But hope is just a polite word for delusion. When I pushed the door gently, the universe gave its answer. Inside, Ava, real name Ariana Vale, stood barefoot near the kitchen island, her blonde hair in a loose knot, wearing a silk robe that screamed overpriced vanity. She was cutting fruit like she was hosting a meditation brunch, humming some soft tune that felt too serene for a woman orchestrating multiple felonies. And Ethan, he was standing by the balcony, staring at the ocean with the hollow expression of a man who already cashed out his future. Neither noticed me at first. And maybe that was the first sign of how insulated their little fantasy had become. They didn't expect the real world to walk through their unlocked door. Ava saw me first, her knife paused midair. "Oh," she said softly, tilting her head like I was a lost tourist. "You must be Lena." My name in her mouth sounded like perfume layered over poison. She didn't scream, she didn't panic. She didn't even reach for her phone, she simply smiled, subtle, confident, annoyingly calm. Ethan turned around at the sound of my name and the shock on his face was almost comical. His eyes widened. His throat bobbed as he tried to swallow the truth he'd been choking on for months. "Lena," he whispered like I was the ghost and he was the living one. I shut the door behind me. My voice came out steady. "What's wrong, Ethan? You look like you've seen a dead person." His face collapsed in shame, guilt, confusion, whatever cocktail of regret he had brewing. But guilt was too little too late. "Lena, I can explain." I held up the death certificate. "Start with this, it's very artistic. Love the signature, very you." Ava's smile didn't falter. She set the knife down neatly like she was ending a cooking show segment. "Lena, I understand this must be painful," she began, in the same soft tone therapists use before billing a patient $250 an hour. "But Ethan and our connection, please," I cut in. "I've seen deeper connections between USB cables." Ethan winced, but Ava, she chuckled, actually chuckled. "You're sharp," she said. "No wonder Ethan struggled to tell you. You see too much?" Funny thing was, she wasn't wrong, I did see too much. And now I was seeing something else. Ethan's face wasn't just guilty, it was scared. "Not of me, of her." Ava touched his arm lightly and he flinched. Not much, but enough. Enough for me to catalog it with every other detail my brain was silently collecting. His shoulders were tense. His eyes darted to her before he spoke. He wasn't standing near her out of closeness. He was standing near her out of conditioning. Oh God, this wasn't a love affair, this was grooming. Ava stepped closer to me, keeping her posture relaxed, as if I were some skittish animal she needed to handle gently. "I know you're angry," she said, "but you need to let him go. Ethan wasn't happy, he's been trapped for years. I'm helping him start over." "By killing him on paper and draining our accounts?" I asked. She shrugged elegantly. "Transitions cost money." Ethan finally found his voice. "Lena, please don't make this harder." Ava's helping me fix things. I messed up at work. There were some deals. I didn't want you dragged into it. Of course. The classic wounded bird narrative. Only this bird had voluntarily flown into a glass window named Ava. Ethan, I said, did you even know Ava has 3 different identities, or that 2 of her previous partners went bankrupt right after she helped them? He stiffened, just a fraction, but I saw it. Ava smiled politely, but her eyes turned razor sharp. You've been investigating me? It's a hobby, I said. Some people collect stamps, I collect evidence. Her jaw twitched, barely perceptible. You should be careful. You're putting yourself at risk by digging? Ah, yes. The first crack, threat disguised as concern. I leaned in slightly. Funny, that's exactly what the last man who tried to start over with you said before he vanished. For the first time, her expression faltered. Ethan glanced at her sharply. Ava, what is she talking about? Ava didn't answer. She didn't need to. Silence is an answer too, incriminating if you know how to interpret it. I turned to Ethan. You think she loves you. You're her next financial plan. Her newest reinvention. She doesn't want to build a life with you, Ethan. She wants to disappear using you. Ava's voice dropped its sweet coating. Ethan, we should leave. Now, Ethan looked torn between fear, shame, and the pathetic desire to believe the woman he'd chosen over me wasn't a sociopathic fraud artist. Ethan, I said quietly, did she tell you about the passport appointment tomorrow? The joint application, the matching surnames? He blinked, once, twice, like a man rebooting. I didn't know about matching names, he whispered. Ava's lips tightened in irritation that she couldn't hide fast enough. And did she tell you, I added, that the passport she filled out for you listed you as having no living relatives? His knees nearly buckled. Ava stepped forward, this time not gentle, gripping his arm with fingers that dug too deeply. She's lying, she hissed. No, he murmured, pulling his arm away. You are. Her mask cracked. And when a master manipulator's mask cracks, it shatters. Her eyes turned flat, cold, calculating. You should have stayed home, Lena, she said. You just made things very complicated. She moved toward her purse. I stepped between them and the door. No one's going anywhere. Ava tilted her head. Who's going to stop us? The people already on their way, I said. I forwarded your file to a fraud investigator 2 hours ago. They've been tracking the number of identities you've used. They know about the men before Ethan. They know about the offshore accounts. Ethan's breath hitched. Ava's eyes flickered not fear but strategy. She pivoted. Ethan, she said sweetly, she's lying to separate us. You know how she is, controlling, calculated. Oh, trust me, I interrupted. If I were controlling, you'd both be in zip ties in the bathtub right now. Ava's facade disintegrated. She lunged toward Ethan, not lovingly, but to drag him out. He stumbled, her grip was iron. He finally snapped. Let go, he shouted, yanking his arm free. What are you doing, Ava? This is crazy, she rounded on him. I'm saving you. You were supposed to leave with me. You said you wanted a new life. No, he whispered. I said I wanted to fix my mistakes. You told me disappearing was the only way. She laughed, a bitter, unhinged sound. You think she'll take you back after what you did? You think you'll survive prison without my help? Do you even understand what you've been part of? Her voice echoed against the glass walls like a confession leaking out of her soul. And that's when Ethan broke. He collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. I didn't know any of this. He looked so small, so pathetic, so utterly lost. Ava inhaled sharply, recalibrating. Predators don't panic, they pivot. She turned to me. Fine, she said coldly. Take him, take the debt, take the liability, take this entire mess, but don't think for a second you've beaten me. Oh, Ava, I said softly. The game isn't over, this is just the introduction. She smiled, slow, serpentine. Then I look forward to chapter 2. And with that, she grabbed her purse and walked out the door like she was sashing down a runway. But as it clicked shut, Ethan whispered, Lena, what have I done? I exhaled for the first time in hours. What you always do, Ethan, I said quietly. You trusted the wrong person. His voice cracked. Can you help me? That was the cruel irony. He didn't deserve my help. He didn't deserve anything from me. But if I didn't help him, Ava would erase him completely and eventually loop back around to destroy other men foolish enough to believe in her soft voice and ocean blue lies. And I had no intention of letting that happen, so I looked him straight in the eye. I can help you, I said, but not because you deserve it. Then why? Because she deserves to lose. Ethan broke into silent tears. I turned away and pulled out my phone. I wasn't done investigating. I was just getting warmed up. Ava thought she'd met her match. She had no idea she'd just met her ending. For the first time since the death certificate landed in my mailbox, Ethan fell silent. Not guilty silent, not scared silent, empty silent. He sat hunched on the edge of the rented sofa, staring at the floor like the answers might be hiding between the carpet fibers. The early morning light slipped through the curtains, brushing across his face and exposing the toll the last months had taken on him: pale skin, sunken cheeks, a thin tremor running across his hands. He'd been unraveling long before I showed up. I just happened to arrive at the final stage. Meanwhile, my own adrenaline was burning out, leaving behind a cold clarity I wasn't sure I liked. Part of me wanted to scream. Another wanted to slap him. Another wanted to drag him out of that apartment and let him face every consequence he earned with his cowardice. But somewhere deep inside, a quieter version of me whispered, focus, not on him, on her. Because Ava, Ariana, whatever name she wore next, wasn't done. People like her never walk away, not cleanly, not quietly. She'd be back not for him, but for her unfinished plans, and I intended to be waiting. After several minutes, Ethan finally lifted his eyes. What happens now? I studied him. That depends on how much truth you're willing to tell. He swallowed hard. All of it, I swear. Just give me a chance to fix this. The sadness in his voice didn't move me the way it once would have. Not after everything he'd done. But I nodded anyway. Not out of love, not out of forgiveness, but because information was oxygen and I needed air to bring Ava down. I sat across from him. Start from the beginning. He wiped his face and inhaled shakily. I didn't plan any of this, not at first. It started at a seminar. She sat next to me. We started talking. She was funny, sharp. She made me feel understood. The words tasted rotten in the air. I kept my expression still. Understood how? He hesitated. Like I wasn't failing. I blinked. Failing at what? His face twisted in shame. At work, my numbers. My team, the investigation they started. The mistakes I made, they weren't small ones. I trusted the wrong people. I made risky moves. I lied about them. I buried them. Each sentence was like peeling rotting layers from a core. And she knew, I asked quietly. He nodded. I didn't tell her, not at first, but she guessed. She just saw everything in me. Predators do, I said. He flinched. She said she could help, he whispered. Said she could rebirth my life. That I didn't have to drown in guilt, that starting over was the only way. And you believed her enough to fake your own death? He covered his face. She made it sound easy, clean, like we'd build something new together. I almost laughed. Not out of humor, out of disbelief that anyone could be so blind. But then he added something that froze the laugh in my throat. She told me you'd be fine. My jaw tightened. She assessed your wife's emotional resilience while planning your disappearance? Yes, he whispered. She said you didn't need me, that you were stronger without me, that I was the dead weight you didn't know you were carrying. I stared at him. So Ava had studied me too. She wasn't just a manipulator, she was a strategist. She never targeted the man alone. She targeted his world, his weaknesses, his attachments, his guilt. I wasn't just the wife. I was part of Ethan's psychological blueprint. A variable Ava used to mold him, isolate him, cut him off life piece by piece. When I didn't answer immediately, Ethan looked up, expectation trembling in his eyes. Do you believe me? He asked. I took a breath. I don't trust you, but I trust patterns, and Ava's pattern is clear. You weren't her partner, you were her pawn. He nodded slowly, as if hearing the truth out loud loosened something tight inside him. What do we do? He murmured. We, I repeated. There is no we, Ethan, not anymore. His face crumbled. But I continued, if you want a chance at surviving what she pulled you into, you're going to help me stop her. He nodded. And that was all I needed. I stood up. Pack whatever you have, we're leaving. She'll be back for something: documents, cash, the passport. They always return for the last puzzle piece. He didn't argue. For once, he simply obeyed. It took him less than 10 minutes to throw together a bag full of wrinkled shirts, scattered papers, and panic. While he packed, I walked through the apartment, studying everything Ava touched. She left things intentionally. A citrus vanilla candle. A leather notebook, a half-written affirmation postcard, a silk scarf draped over a chair. But there were also gaps, places where something was missing, drawers slightly ajar, Files moved recently. A faint indentation on the carpet where a bag had once sat. Ava didn't walk out defeated. She walked out reorganizing her next move. We left the apartment before the sun was fully up. I didn't look back. Back in the car, Ethan fell asleep within minutes, exhaustion overtaking him. I let him. The silence gave me space to think. Ava wasn't just experienced, she was methodical. She groomed, isolated, exploited, and vanished with mechanical precision. She built emotional cults around herself, convincing men they were chosen, special, reborn. She used language of healing to justify destruction. The more I revisited the data I collected, the more horrifying her pattern became. This wasn't just fraud. This was psychological warfare wrapped in spiritual jargon, and it was far from over. By the time I reached home, Ethan was awake but hollow again, trailing behind me like a shadow with a conscience. The moment I stepped into our house, the familiarity hit me, not warmth, not comfort, just memory. The walls that once held laughter now felt like witness stands. Ethan stopped at the doorway. "Should I come in?" "You're not a vampire," I muttered, "just walk." He tried to smile weakly. It didn't land. Inside, I laid out a plan. "We need to collect everything Ava touched," I said. "Transactions, messages, screenshots, full timeline," and then the doorbell rang, a sharp, commanding pound, not a neighbor, not a courier. I exchanged a glance with Ethan, another knock, louder. "Stay here," I whispered. I approached the door, each step measured. When I cracked it open, a woman stood on the porch, sharp black blazer, badge on her belt, hair pulled back in a tight braid. "Lena Cole?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm Detective Mara Linton. We need to talk about a woman named Ariana Vale." There it was, confirmation that Ava hadn't just annoyed victims, she triggered law enforcement. Detective Linton stepped inside with the energy of someone always 2 steps ahead. "We've been tracking Ariana for months," she said. "We suspected she resurfaced in this region but couldn't confirm it." Her eyes shifted toward Ethan, who was trying to blend into the furniture. "And I assume," she added dryly, "that's your missing husband." I nodded once. The detective approached Ethan. "Mr. Cole, you're alive." He looked ready to curl into a ball. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. That simplifies my paperwork." She turned back to me. "How much do you know about Ariana?" "Enough to write a dissertation." Detective Linton smirked. "Good, because we can't catch her without people like you." That sentence struck something inside me. "This isn't just fraud," she continued. "It's an organized pattern, emotional exploitation, financial identity shifts. At least 4 states have open files, but she slips through every time. She's brilliant, dangerous, and very, very good at disappearing." I swallowed. "She won't slip this time." Detective Linton looked impressed but cautious. "You sound sure." "I am," I said. "Why?" "Because she underestimated the wrong woman." The next weeks blurred into sleepless nights and strategic days. Detective Linton brought evidence. I brought patterns. Ethan brought what scraps of information Ava had fed him between seduction sessions. We mapped her movement across states, every wellness retreat, fake business, manipulated partner, emotional hostage she collected like broken stones. When we laid everything on the dining table, it looked like a murder board from a psychological thriller. But we weren't the only ones after her. 3 other women contacted me, victims' wives or partners who had been indirectly destroyed by Ava. Patricia, a financial auditor from Maine. Elena, a therapist from Virginia. Renee, an ex-investigator from Florida. Each had watched someone they loved fall into Ava's honey-coated trap. Each had lost money, time, trust, or the man himself, and each wanted justice desperately. We didn't become friends, we became allies. A silent, coordinated force of women tired of watching a predator hide behind incense and affirmations. I didn't tell Ethan everything. Some truths were too raw, some wounds too fresh. But he helped where he could. For the first time in months, he wasn't under Ava's spell. He was under the weight of his own conscience. One night, while reviewing Ava's communication patterns, Ethan finally said something that made the room go still. "She kept everything," he whispered. "Document scans, voice memos, photos, a backup drive hidden under the floorboard of the apartment bedroom." I stared at him. "And you're telling me this now?" "I didn't remember until today," he said quietly. "I'm sorry," rage shot through me, not because of the delay, because of what that backup drive meant. Her trophies, her receipts, her leverage, her escape plan. If we got that drive, we could bury her. but getting it wouldn't be simple. Because returning to that apartment meant walking directly into Ava's terrain, and predators always return to their territory, which meant one thing: she'd be waiting. If you had told me a month earlier that I'd be walking back into the coastal apartment where my husband almost erased himself with the confidence of a woman holding all the cards, I would have laughed. The kind of laugh people call unhinged. But today, as I stepped into the building lobby of Harborview Pier with Detective Linton at my side and a quiet army of women watching from strategically chosen angles outside, I wasn't scared. Not because Ava wasn't dangerous, she was, but because now I was. This time she hadn't just underestimated me, she had created me. Ethan stood behind me, thinner than before, paler, his eyes carrying the exhaustion of a man whose soul had been wrung out and left to dry. He wasn't my partner anymore, not emotionally, not romantically, but he was still a piece of this story, a piece I needed to place carefully. "Stay behind me," I told him. He nodded silently. My fingers closed around the metal box we retrieved earlier, the one holding everything Ava never wanted the world to see: her blueprints, her tactics, the skeleton keys to every life she ruined. Holding it felt like holding a beating heart of the monster itself. The hallway smelled the same, a faint mix of sea salt and citrus vanilla. She had been here, recently, too recently. When we reached apartment 203, the door was closed this time, not cracked open like before. Closed, that alone told me everything. Ava was inside. Detective Linton motioned for silence and pressed her ear to the door. For a moment, all I heard was the muffled hum of the ocean in the distance. Then a soft creak like a footstep on wood. She nodded once. Showtime. I gripped the doorknob, ready to push, but Detective Linton lifted her hand. "Let me." She drew her weapon, turned the knob slowly, and pushed the door open with a precise, silent motion perfected through years of training. The apartment was dark, not completely, just dark enough that your eyes had to adjust. Shadows stretched across the walls like crooked fingers. The curtains were drawn, letting in only a sliver of light that made everything look half real. Half dream, half nightmare. Ava stood near the balcony door. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't panicking. She was waiting. Her blonde hair was loose, falling around her shoulders in soft waves. She wore a long beige coat. Barefoot. Calm, serene. The kind of serenity that wasn't peace at all, it was calculation wearing a robe. "Hello, Lena," she said without turning fully. "I was beginning to think you'd come alone." Her voice was soft, warm, a welcome, a threat. I stepped fully inside. "You knew I'd return?" "Of course," she murmured. "Women always return to broken things." The jab didn't sting, not anymore. Detective Linton stepped forward, gun raised. "Ava Vale, stop right there." Ava sighed as if annoyed by the break in conversation. "Detective Linton, I read your case once. Domestic homicide, mother of two. Husband was the killer, wasn't he? You still see his face when you sleep?" The detective didn't flinch, but her grip tightened. Ava finally turned around. No panic, no fear, just a soft, eerie smile. "You brought reinforcements, Lena. Admirable, predictable, but admirable." I held up the metal evidence box. "You dropped something," I said coldly. She looked at the box with a strange expression, almost nostalgic. "My past," she whispered. "Such a heavy thing to carry. Thank you for picking it up for me." "You're done, Ava, done," she laughed quietly. "Oh no, sweetheart. This is just the beginning." She took a slow step toward me. Detective Linton aimed directly at her chest. "I wouldn't," Ava said gently. "You don't want another news scandal on your hands, another career-ending lawsuit. Another lawsuit for excessive force." Detective Linton didn't move. She didn't have to. I did. "Ava," I said, stepping forward, "stop. Whatever plan you think you're executing, it's over. We have evidence from 9 states. You won't talk your way out of this." Her smile persisted, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You think this ends because you want it to," she whispered. "You think justice is a straight line, a neat puzzle. No, darling. I don't end. You're cornered," I said. "No," she tilted her head. "I never walk into corners, I walk into opportunities." And then she reached into her coat. I froze. Detective Linton stepped in front of me instantly, gun ready to fire. But Ava didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a small black phone, a burner, and held it up between 2 fingers like a cigarette. "You want me? You want to bring me down?" she asked softly. "Good, then watch." She tapped the screen once. A loud boom echoed outside. The building shook. My heart slammed against my ribs. What did you do? I demanded. Relax, she whispered. Just insurance. But I knew, another explosion, closer, violent. Detective Linton's radio crackled, vehicle explosion, parking lot multiple, Ava smiled. I learned from last time, she said softly. You move as a group. You protect each other, you build alliances, it's cute, truly. You planted bombs, I choked out. No, not bombs, just alarms, smoke grenades, distractions, noise. Enough chaos for me to walk out. She looked toward the balcony, my blood turned to fire. You're not escaping, I said. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. I escaped the moment I stepped into your husband's life. This, she motioned around her, is just the theatrical ending you crave. Detective Linton lunged forward. Ava moved faster. She darted toward the balcony, yanked the door open, and vanished into the wind. We ran after her, but she was already climbing down the fire escape, coat billowing behind her like smoke. Go, Detective Linton shouted. I bolted down the hallway, taking the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding as I burst through the back exit. The alley was empty. A faint trail of footprints on the wet pavement. A flutter of beige fabric caught on a rusted fence. She was gone, again, but something was different. This time I wasn't devastated, I wasn't broken, because unlike before, she didn't leave with a clean slate, she left footprints, a direction. A weakness, her obsession with control, her need for closure, her inability to leave a story unfinished. And I would use it, every bit of it. Over the next weeks, the world closed in on Ava Vale like a tightening noose. Detective Linton filed charges in 4 states. Patricia traced offshore accounts to a shell company Ava had forgotten to dissolve. Renee identified a pattern in her travel history that matched 2 previous aliases. Elena tracked down a former victim Ava thought was too broken to speak. I analyzed her psychological patterns, building a profile that helped law enforcement predict her next steps. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She was a pattern with a name, a predator with a trail, a fugitive with a dossier thicker than a textbook. And every trail ended the same way, a small coastal town. A rented apartment under a fake identity, a retreat center. A new soul she could mold. But her final mistake was picking a retreat center that had just installed facial recognition security, ironically, for spiritual safety. They flagged her at check-in. By the time police surrounded the building, she was leading a yoga class. Even then, she didn't fight, didn't scream, didn't plea. She sat on the floor, legs crossed, hands resting on her knees, as if she'd known the ending all along. When the officers lifted her to her feet, she turned to me because, yes, I was there watching from the glass door, and she whispered, "You wanted hope?" I didn't answer. "You got it," she said softly. "Not the way you wanted, but the way you needed." Then she smiled, a small, unsettling curl of lips as if this had all been an elaborate therapy session instead of a manhunt. And they took her away. No dramatics, no explosions, no threats. Just a predator finally tired of running. A few months later, Ava Vale was sentenced to 34 years in federal prison. Fraud, coercion, identity manipulation, financial abuse, conspiracy, intent to cause harm, cross-state fraud, psychological exploitation. The list went on and on. She didn't look at me in the courtroom. I didn't need her to, because the moment the judge read the final sentence, something inside me loosened, untangled, softened. Hope wasn't loud. It wasn't triumphant. It was the quiet exhale of a woman who finally stepped out of someone else's storm. Ethan rebuilt his life, one apology at a time. We didn't reconcile, but we didn't destroy each other either. He found sobriety, honesty, maybe even redemption someday, and I found something too. I found purpose. I started a consulting firm, not for corporations, not for accounting giants, but for women. Women who'd been manipulated. Women who'd been lied to, stripped financially, emotionally, mentally. Women who needed a strategist, not just a lawyer. Women like the ones Ava left behind. Women like the ones Ava left behind. Women like the one I used to be. My first client called me a rebirth strategist. I hated the term at first, too poetic for the mess life really is. But over time, I understood. Rebirth isn't about starting over. It's about choosing yourself after someone else tried to unwrite you. It's about closing the door on a chapter you didn't deserve to live, but lived anyway. It's about standing at your own doorway one morning, sunlight warming your face, coffee cooling in your hands, everything quiet, everything soft, everything yours, and realizing this is peace. This is freedom. This is hope. And for the first time, it isn't borrowed, stolen, or faked. It's real, it's mine, and it's just the beginning.